Deep in the freezing heart of Western Russia, a frail, eccentric genius shared a cramped apartment with his aging parents and an unsettling collection of 29 life-sized mummified dolls. They were meticulously dressed in pristine silk dresses, their faces obscured by layers of pale fabric, thick wax, and painted-on smiles. When you pushed a button on their chest, a hollow, mechanical children's tune would chime from a music box hidden deep inside. But these were never dolls. And what the police uncovered beneath that thick layer of painted wax is a true crime story, so deeply disturbing it shattered the minds of hardened detectives. This is the chilling reality of Anatoly Moskvin, the brilliant Russian historian who spent a decade bringing the dead into his living room. The truth of how he kept his terrifying secret hidden right under the noses of his own family will make your blood run cold. In the sprawling industrial city of Nizhny Novgorod, Anatoly Moskvin was a local legend. He was not a violent man. He was a celebrated academic, a towering intellect who spoke 13 languages and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of Celtic history. He wrote incredibly detailed articles for local newspapers and was highly respected by his peers. To anyone walking past him on the gray, snow-bitten streets, he just looked like a stereotypical absent-minded professor. He had unkempt hair, a pale complexion, and teeth rotting from a lifetime of neglect. He was harmless, at least that is what everyone believed, but genius and madness often share a thin, blurry border. Anatoly harbored an obsession that did not belong in classrooms or academic journals. It belonged in the dirt. We will soon get to exactly what triggered this dark fixation when he was just a young boy, but first, you need to understand the sheer scale of his nocturnal hunting grounds. His expertise was not just in languages, but in the dead. Anatoly became a self-proclaimed necropolist, an expert on local cemeteries. He mapped out over 700 burial sites across the region. He spent countless nights sleeping on wooden benches near tombstones, drinking water from muddy puddles, and walking for dozens of miles in the biting cold just to document graves. The community just thought he was a passionate historian, deeply dedicated to preserving the memory of the deceased. They did not know what he was carrying in his heavy canvas bags when the sun went down. For nearly a decade, mourning families across the region noticed strange, terrifying anomalies at the graves of their recently deceased daughters. Small items would go missing. Dirt would look slightly disturbed. Sometimes, chilling, anonymous notes would be left behind. The police were baffled. They assumed it was a cult, or maybe grave robbers looking for jewelry buried with the dead. They never suspected the frail, brilliant linguist who often helped them translate old documents. They had absolutely no idea that under the cover of pitch-black Russian nights, Anatoly was plunging his shovel into the freezing earth, breaking through heavy coffin lids and pulling up the small, decaying bodies of girls between the ages of 3 and 12. He did not view himself as a monster. In his twisted, fragmented reality, he was a savior. He brought them back to his incredibly cluttered apartment, a cramped space he shared with his elderly parents, and began a horrifying process of preservation. The air in that apartment was heavy, choked with the smell of old paper, dust, and something foul that they just could not place. Anatoly masked the scent of decay using a bizarre mixture of baking soda, salt, and various drying agents he stuffed inside the hollowed-out cavities of the remains. He wrapped their fragile, mummified limbs in thick layers of fabric and tights, transforming them into life-sized figures. He covered their rotting faces with wax masks, painting on bright red lips and wide, staring eyes. He dressed them in brightly colored children clothing, knee-high socks, and shiny leather shoes. To complete the terrifying illusion, he embedded mechanical music boxes inside their chest cavities. He wanted them to sing. You might be wondering how on earth his parents lived in the exact same apartment and never realized they were surrounded by mummified corpses. The apartment was famously hoarded, packed floor to ceiling with thousands of books, scattered papers, and junk. Anatoly told his parents that his life-size dolls were just part of a quirky, harmless art project. His parents, completely oblivious to the smell hidden by chemicals in old books, simply accepted it. They even sat in the living room, drinking tea and watching television, while 29 stolen bodies stared blankly at them from the shadows. And as for what pushed this brilliant mind over the edge into sheer depravity, Anatoly later claimed it started when he was just 13 years old. He was walking to school when a funeral procession for an 11-year-old girl passed by. According to him, the grieving adults forced him to step forward and kiss the dead girl on the forehead. That single, cold touch of death fractured his young mind. From that moment on, he believed he could communicate with the dead, and he dedicated his life to waiting for science to figure out a way to bring them back. Until then, he would keep them safe. He threw them birthday parties, serving them tea and cake. He sat them in front of the television to watch cartoons. The horrifying truth remained buried under layers of wax and fabric until a completely unrelated investigation finally brought the police to his doorstep. In 2011, a terror attack at a local airport had authorities deeply on edge, investigating anyone who had ever desecrated Muslim graves in the area. Anatoly was just a suspect of interest for vandalism. The officers knocked on his door, expecting a quick interview with a harmless, eccentric academic. They walked into a nightmare. As they moved through the stifling, hoarded apartment, an officer brushed past one of the large dolls sitting in a chair. A cheerful, tinny melody suddenly began to play from inside its chest. The music box was triggered. The officers looked closer. They noticed a strange, leathery texture protruding from underneath the tight fabric. They saw the dried, blackened skin peeling away from the wax face. The smell of harsh chemicals and faint, sweet decay suddenly made sense. They were not looking at an arts project. They were standing in a makeshift mausoleum. Anatoly Moskvin was immediately arrested, leaving his parents in a state of absolute, world-shattering shock. He was diagnosed with severe schizophrenia and deemed entirely unfit to stand trial, locked away in a psychiatric ward, where he remains to this day. This true crime story stands as a chilling reminder of the monsters hiding in plain sight. Anatoly Moskvin, the brilliant Russian historian, did not haunt dark alleys. He walked among the graves, leaving behind empty coffins and a legacy of mummified dolls that will forever haunt Nizhny Novgorod.
Welcome to Crime Reveals.